This is Sporecast,
where we talk about mold, health, and the spaces that we live in.
Where personal experience meets real conversation.
Where we ask better questions about what's making people sick.
And where no one has to navigate it alone.
Thank you for listening to Sporecast. Before we get started, just a quick note. This podcast is for informational and personal experience purposes only. We are not medical professionals and nothing shared here should be taken as medical advice. We all come from different backgrounds and perspectives, so the opinions shared are our own and may not reflect each other or apply to every situation. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified professional when needed. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Tiff, hey, today we've got Tiff and Dani. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in. What's new in your life right now?
So we did our remediation in May. So I've been dealing with basically focusing on the healing aspect of everything and the PTSD aspect of everything when you go back into a house that you have remediated. Dealing with trying to get through the hot, humid, which of course makes any of us that have been through mold toxicity anxious. I am just focused on that healing part and focused on keeping my body not flared while we go through what feels like, I think right now, about 102.
Yeah. So we're on the other side of you because you're in Michigan, I'm in Wisconsin, and yeah, it's kind of wild. So we are on the flip side of that, where we had 3 remediations done on our house, and our 4th actually started today. So we're just like, okay, that's going. We're dealing with that now, and and then same thing. We're dealing with the insane humidity, trying to stay cool. I think ours is feels like 104 today, and the humidity this morning was something like 75% or something crazy. And so I've got for anyone watching, I've got my Potts Girl summer jug here that's got my
LMT in here.
Yep, element, yep. I've got some of that. I've got some instant hydration. I've got some blueberry creatine,
Yep.
just a little bit of everything. So
we stopped at the store and had to go grab our watermelon flavor because it's citric acid free.
Yeah.
So
yes, that's literally my entire shipment. As I sit here, and I also have an Olipop that definitely has citric acid because I can drink these now without flaring. So,
which is amazing. I still, there is sometimes the other day I had maybe half a Diet Coke and I felt like I was having a party in, in my head because I used to drink Diet Coke all the time and loved it. Now I'm just super nervous to how my body will react, but I did okay. It was like heaven.
Oh, I know. It's such a crazy thing when you can have those little things that you haven't necessarily had in a long time. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I get to have this now. This is amazing.
Yeah. It's just like a treat. I don't drink. So it's oh my gosh, this is the best day ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we were chatting about some of the things that we want to cover on a podcast episode today. And I think you and I connected because we have a similar journey in many ways. But the most similar,
Yay.
I think, is that we both had homes that kind of did us dirty, and we changed tracks and, had different living arrangements. But you and I both ended up not purchasing one type of house and then purchasing a home where we both, I think, kind of feel like we got our butts handed to us in terms of things that were done inspection wise and things that were still missed. And we were both told we had really boring houses, and we both did not find that experience to be true. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know we've both got that shared experience.
Oh my gosh. What a way to connect. But, I found out last summer that I had mold toxicity, super sick, liver and kidneys in the red, all the things. Now, this was before I was just super educated on actual house in the mold or mold in the house. all the things like that. So, my immediate thing was like, oh my gosh, I have to quit vaping. Like it's probably in the vape or, I don't know. Your mind just goes a million miles an hour, especially when your histamine bucket is full and you're just completely flared up. So we didn't know for sure that we, had mold in the house. And we were already planning to sell. So a couple months later, we actually listed the house. So we started looking at houses, and we were in North Dakota at the time. We were looking at moving to Michigan. We ended up getting an offer. So we had found a house over here, which I absolutely loved, which I think is kind of like your story. It just had, the hardwood floors, main level, pretty much had, the master room, just all the things I was looking for. And then we had an inspection, and he found quite a bit of like little things that was wrong with it, but just easy fixes. But my biggest red flag was that there was mold in the attic, covered on the OSB board. You could see it. And, of course, this inspector was like, well, there's mold everywhere. I'm like, well, okay. And the seller, unfortunately, was not willing to work with us to get that OSB board removed, or, remediate, do the things. And so we were like, I was super bummed out, but I was like, okay, this is obviously a sign. And we ended up pulling our offer. We searched and searched for 2 weeks, and we didn't even have like a designated area in Michigan that we were looking at. I mean, we got to the point where we were literally searching the entire state, and kind of got into a panic because we do have an offer. We have somebody that wants to buy our house, so we don't have a lot of time to just be going all over the place. So we did find this house, looked at it 3 times, maybe 4. Had an inspection, and we told ended up being a different inspector than the other house, and told them specifically, Kelly is a disabled veteran with POTS, all the things too. And we're like, water damage, mold, anything environmental is all we care about. Little fixes or whatever, we'll deal with that. But this is what I need you to focus on. And I remember him coming back, exact words, yeah, the inspection was totally boring. And I was like, well, that's great. Like, I love boring. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, and even the rest of the house, it was just it was like tiny things, not even like the other house that actually had big stuff to do. And so I was like, okay, well, that's fantastic. You trust him, right? And so anyway, we ended up moving forward with the offer and pack all of our animals. I'm talking 7 chickens, 4 dogs, 5 cats, like the whole shebang, and drive 13 hours. We get to Michigan. Day 4, I ended up fainting in the morning, which thank goodness I landed in this, like we had snow or it would have been straight on concrete. And I fainted, taken to the ER. And at first I'm kind of thinking, well, my nervous system was probably just super spiked with all the move and the stress and the drive and like all the things and the excitement. And you just kind of like built everything up and then just boom, you crash. Nah. Nope. We find out that through little, like almost like this big conspiracy wrapped up to one. It was like one thing would happen that would lead us to have to check for this thing, and it just kept going until before you know it, we have a mold inspector here that's like, yeah, your crawl space is covered in penicillium, aspergillus. We've got a moldy OSB board from water damage up in the attic, which of course Kelly's ended up in the ER too because she's allergic to penicillin. So penicillium, and yeah, so it's just been one complete nightmare after the next. And it's brutal because people are like, well, just go after the home inspector. You can't do that. There's a little writing on there that says they can't be held liable for anything over what the home inspection cost is. So, okay, great. We got $500 back. If you're new to mold remediation, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars. So yes, that $500 was nice, but I would rather you be held liable for the fact that you up and missed this. Even in the attic specifically, the inspector did end up coming back at one point and moving some of the insulation over to find mold on there, and specifically said, had I just moved that that insulation over, because it was new insulation. So if you're looking at it, he's like, yeah, it actually does look kind of weird because the rest of the stuff was super old. The house is late 80s or 70s. So yeah, but it's like he can say what he wants because he knows that they can't be held liable. It doesn't matter. So it's been a very long 6 to 7 months to what we thought was just going to be this new journey and this new state and a new house. We wanted to downsize our house because the other house was so big, and just be able to save money. And it's been literally everything but that. So here we are.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like our journeys are so similar because I think we even bought our homes at similar times too. Like we
Yeah, the
bought in
first of
December
January. Yeah,
and
or
you
the
guys
end
bought.
of January. Yeah, we moved here right then. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because ours was really similar. So, like, our backstory, the short version is we went through a couple of remediations in our old home. And, at the time, we really didn't know what a good remediation was. Like, we didn't know. And I think we thought that it was a really isolated problem and that like, our home was just old, right? Like, we thought mold was an old home problem, and just so many things that we learned. I mean, it was just I always joke that it's like learning with a fire hose spraying on your face because it's like that's the level that it feels like you have to learn. So, we moved then and we lived with family for a little bit, and then I started reacting there. And then we had bought land, and then we decided not to build, and then we lived in two different apartments. I mean, it was crazy, and my body would respond differently in every single environment. Like, it was just so wild. And I think that was like a really dysregulating experience to live in so many different places. So same, like similar to you, we had actually, the original home that we had picked out was a twin home. And part of that was because the budget was doable, right? And it actually, like, your brain kind of, like how you have that regret that you just have to let go of. But there were a lot of like really good things with this home. Like the main mold inspection, it was pretty boring, but there was like water that had come in around the electrical box, and there was it was a walkout. So the part of the basement that was underground definitely had condensation. And so we were freaking out about that, or I was freaking out about that. And then, the basement flooring was actually like really thin carpet over cement. So it was probably like not actually bad. But there had been a tub leak upstairs, and we weren't sure, had that gone further. And then we were like, oh, it's a shared, attic space. You don't know, it's, if you ever have to reside a twin home, like you have to agree with your neighbor, it's not wrapped. Like there were all of these things that we just like were unsure about. So we withdrew our offer. So we had looked at, I think, probably like 58 homes. I mean, it was something astronomical, and we ended up changing realtors in the middle too, because like the realtor that we would, oh my gosh, I haven't even told anyone about this, but like our original realtor would walk through and he would be like, oh, this house doesn't have a Dani problem, as we would go into a musty smelling basement. And I would be like, my husband would look at me and he'd be like, like, mm-mm. And it's like you could literally smell or feel the damp. And it's like, before mold, I'm like, I would just be like, oh, that's a Midwest basement. And now I'm like, oh, this is a wet Midwest basement, right? Like this is not a dry basement. So we kind of like got to this point where we ended up changing realtors, and, she was really compassionate too. But I think I was starting to feel the pressure. Plus, we were all sick in the apartment that we were in. I shouldn't say we all were. My kids were actually doing okay. My husband was fine. I was still sick there. So I think we started to feel a lot of pressure to make a choice. And, my husband had said something to me once where he's like, what if the house we're supposed to find is out there? And my brain kind of like latched onto that. And I was like, the house is out there, And we found a single owner home. So we did, I think there were so many things that people told us to look for, like non-flip, single owner, wrapped, not wrapped, look under this, just so many things that it's like your brain just can't find one house that fits everything. So we found a single owner home that hadn't been flipped, that all the framing that we could see looked good. It was the only attic in all the homes that I hadn't crawled in, because by this point I had my rotator cuff repair. So I kind of like trusted people. And the home inspection, in hindsight, I'm like, this home inspection had way more on it than I would have preferred, way more flags. And the mold inspection, though, came back with a kitchen sink leak, which we're like, okay, that's really common. And then the utility room was high, which we're like, okay, what, like a utility room that has fiberglass insulation, like, and didn't have a dehumidifier. We're like, of course that's gonna be a thing. And like, there wasn't a ceiling in there. And so the framing looked good. And so we're like, okay, like this looks fine. We can remediate a utility room. So we really thought that we were just going to be dealing with a kitchen sink leak and a utility room. So what happened with our remediation was it was supposed to take like 2 weeks, right? It was supposed to be done like within 2 weeks. And the original post tester that we brought in, we didn't like her assessment because she was just kind of like, nope, it's fine. And so we're like, no, we're going to pull in high sensitivity. Like we ended up opening up the basement and they did the flood cuts and it was dry, but then the upper part of the basement had all of this condensation pattern around it. So, I mean, people were like, we don't know why this is. Was it not exteriorly insulated properly? And so I was freaking out then because I'm like, is there something structurally wrong with my house? And so we ended up calling in someone else. We ended up calling in a different tester. I mean, it just kind of snowballed where our remediations happened in January, March, and April. And every single time we opened up more and we found more problems where it was like it was past and then we still had to remove the basement ceiling. We still removed lookout walls and found humidity patterns. We found intrusion through the electrical box, which was the exact same. It was just like all the things that we had run from in other homes. We found all of them in this home. And then there was a roof leak that had never, been addressed or figured out. I mean, it was just like what started as one small project turned into removing the entire kitchen, removing all of our floors to expose subfloor, removing chunks of subfloor, removing 2 of the 3 bathrooms, fully gutting the basement, like every portion of the basement. And we have a crew back there today to do what I'm manifesting as our last remediation, to remove the last of the materials because we had stachy and chetomium in the bathrooms. And I'm like, oh my God, we never even had stachy and chetomium in our old house. We just had aspen. So it just, I mean, it's felt like trauma stacking in a way. And I've had to like really kind of, I know like you've shared that too, because it's like you have to just like pull your brain back online and be like, okay, like we can still figure this out, but it's really, really extreme, honestly.
Yeah, and it's exhausting. I know we've talked a lot about, like the trauma aspect of it, where it's not necessarily that I don't feel safe in this house. Um, I feel like, you know, I do feel like it's hard to get a mold-free home unless you are literally building and watching every single board go in. And of course, I feel like there's a lot of other factors of things that play into mold growth itself. Um, but we've even thought about, doing what we can here and within a year, looking at other houses, more so because we've had so much trauma in just the 6, 7 months barely that we've been here, that we're like, how do we get comfortable to even make this our home? Because it's just been so stressful. So stressful. I mean, the seller lied on the disclosure. There's so much other stuff. It wasn't just a water leak, there's actual water damage that had happened. It's just, it's so much. And it makes you, kind of have some resentment, like with your home. It's like, yeah, okay, I can, paint and change and maybe put this and this up, but like, it's just, it's the energy that you feel like there's things that just can't make it, make it better.
And that's like I joked. I mean, I think I've said this on every single episode that I've been on, but I'm like, my lifeline has been like therapy. And you guys, because it's like more than anything, I needed people to tell me, like, no, what you're going through actually is traumatic. Because I think in my brain, I always want to minimize it and be like, I'm being dramatic. Like, the situation isn't that bad. I'm being dramatic. But then when I really look at it, I'm like, okay, I haven't slept in a bed with my husband since January of 2025. I slept in a tent from May of 2025 all the way through December, and then slept on someone's porch for a couple of months, and then went right back to a tent in like April. It's like literally my body revolted that much that to anyone outside of this community, it would sound insane. But it's like, no, it actually was traumatic. And we lived in, including my mom's and the two apartments, it's like, no, we had 4 different addresses over the course of 1 year. And I have 3 kids, and we were trying to just like hold it together for them and be normal, trying to like hold my marriage together, which I don't know what, couple wouldn't. It's like literally taking gasoline on any, marital struggles that you have or dynamics. And it's like throwing not even a match, like a Molotov cocktail on it, you
Yeah,
know?
especially when
And
you have
so,
one person who can be so deathly
oh,
sick and one person who's literally thriving, because to that person, they look at you like, I don't get it. Because a lot of people have grown up with mold everywhere. As a kid, it was like my grandma's like, "Oh, just cut off the mold and eat the other side." I mean, that's just like what you did. And now we're in a time where it's just like, and when you get that sick, it's hard not to have trauma or PTSD evolved around it, because I was to the
oh,
point I felt like I was living virtual reality. I mean, if we went out in public, I felt like I was in a game, or like I was just so super drunk, which I was very much sober. I mean, you just feel so out of touch with reality. So when people think or look at you like you're crazy, it's easy to just be like, oh my God, am I crazy? Like, am I losing my mind? Which, of course, another side effect from mold. So it's like,
yeah.
it's so
Which,
hard.
yeah, which we've talked about, like even in our group chat of mold people, that we're like, this has the makings for complex trauma, because you are in a situation where you are often dependent on other people, because when you are the person that is ill, it's not even imagined helplessness. It actually isn't. It's that you actually need someone to do the pieces to either get that environment to a spot where you can be healthy, or you need to have help to get to a different environment, because you often can't do those pieces alone. So you are forced to depend on other people to get to that spot. And if you encounter things like professionals that don't accomplish something properly, or don't do a good enough job, or a spouse or significant other that isn't supportive, or any of those things, it literally can create this state of like learned helplessness, where no matter how much you fight, you are continually knocked back down. And that was I'm not even going to say that has been my biggest struggle, because I'm used to, I think every single one of us in our group is used to being a highly functioning female, like high functioning. We can pave our own way. We can do all of this. And then you get knocked into a spot where you can't. And your body actually is setting the boundary. Like, it's not even something you can work or think or medicate or treat your way through. Like, there is no way out except for having those pieces in place. And that's the piece that, like, what you said about feeling like you're in virtual reality. I would actually ask Dylan, like, that's my husband, is this real? Like, is this real? Like, am I dreaming? Like, is this actually happening? Because I can't comprehend that this has been 2 years of our life. Like, I actually can't process in my body, in my brain, that this is my current reality.
And I was like that for a long time too. I mean, moving into this new house thinking, and then you start asking all the things like, did I just put some type of bad karma out into the world? for the universe to be like, here, we're going to give you, as a disabled veteran and a person who's also been through mold toxicity, we're just going to give you more. It's like, what kind of bad karma or energy am I putting out there to get this? And it's a constant, thing in your mind where you spiral, because I try not, unlike you, I try not to think of the what ifs. I'm like, we could have bought the house that we really, really wanted and just remediated ourselves because we ended up having to do it anyway. Yeah, God, the mind spiral is probably absolutely one of the worst things ever.
Well, and that's where like I asked myself too, I was like, did I manifest this? Like, did
Yeah.
I manifest going back into like financial destitution? I'm like, I'm pretty sure I was trying to be smart and objective, and like I calculated out, because like we had owned our previous home for quite a long time. So like I knew how much equity we had in the home, and like we tried to pick something on land that wasn't near cell towers, and like, was in a better environment, and like looked at all these things that we could do. And we're like, okay, we can afford this mortgage. When our land sells, we'll take that and we'll put that in as the other 10%. That's a pipe dream now, but like we tried to do, and we're like, we'd still have this much left for remediation and this much left for a rebuild. So we put it all on paper and then learned that mold does not care what your budget is. Like, it does not give a hoot about it. And so I'm like, no, we actually tried. There were definitely things that we found that we weren't checking the box on, but there was almost no home that checked every box. And I guess like I have talked to people that have looked at, like, I know one couple said they looked at 167 houses before they found the right one. And I think with kids, we just ran into that spot where we're like, we can't, like we're done and we're just going to have the consequences. But then it was like, I didn't want these consequences. Like, these are not the consequences I had in mind. It's just, it's,
Yeah, it's one thing to go into it knowing, okay, I have to remediate this small space. It's another thing going in and realizing within 6 months your entire house is completely gutted. And
yeah,
like you haven't even lived in it.
yes, yes, yes. And that's the wild piece too, is like we're looking at, we're hoping our remediation is finished Friday. And then we are putting in a Panasonic ERV. We're putting in that type of air exchanger to try and help the home breathe, because we're like, okay, if we can do, any small thing, at some point we might have to replace our HVAC. Like, who knows? There's always going to be things, right? But I'm like, okay, multiple people have told us an ERV in tightly built homes. Ours is a 2004. I know like Bailey's is a 2004, Laura's is a 2004, Stacy's is early 2000s. I was talking to another gal. I know a lot of people with the late 90s, early 2000 era homes that have run into this. And I mean, it's red house, blue house, old house, new house, right? If you start looking for the early 2000 homes, you're going to find them anywhere. But since it was on the beginning of that tight build timeline, that was something that was recommended to us for improving the air quality, and especially if we couldn't address the attic right away. I know that was an area you had to address, and that's an area that for us is having to take a back seat. And so we're opting to caulk and seal everything from the attic space so that it's hopefully kind of like pressurized away for now with that ERV as well. And it will be something that we address, but it's not something we can address immediately. We've got a giant canvas tent that we're going to put in the backyard as an additional space, and we're going to hope that that's good enough. And then we have subfloor, and then we have one bathroom, which is not problem free. And then we have a fully gutted basement. So I think like when we do move in, we're going to be spending most of our time in the basement until we can just put in floors, which I didn't ever want to learn to DIY all these things. I'll be honest, I'm kind of like a princess. Like I will learn, but I like don't want to learn in trial by fire when I'm already exhausted. Like if I want to learn, I want it to be at a time when I'm not in survival mode. So I'm like still trying to bring my brain and body through that piece.
It's almost like I feel like the people that built these homes, or at least maybe previous owners, were all in like survival mode, because I'm like, because we had a lot of the same issues where things aren't, properly caulked and sealed, windows, doors. Um, we had zero insulation in the house, which we also found out on this journey. Um, so yeah,
What?
yeah, there's
What?
like no insulation in the house because it's old. So my guess is obviously nobody has done it. So we have already, after remediation, pulled what was left of it in the attic and had that redone. And then of course we'll have to do the house. But I mean, you think you just literally have to do like one thing at a time because none of this stuff is cheap. It's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah. They had fiberglass in your attic, didn't they? Wasn't your attic
Yes.
fiberglass? Which is no, no.
Sometimes I literally just sit like speechless. Um,
Yeah.
and of course,
Oh,
we know
I
like
get it.
spray foam is kind of the big thing, which ends up is cheaper. But yeah, we're not doing spray foam either. So, and even our mold remediator was like, absolutely do not do spray foam.
We have blown in, and I think we still have to
Yeah,
remove it because that's where all of our, because one thing that happened during our remediation was the containment and air scrubbing was pulled before the remediation was completed. It was a whole thing, and so our attic got cross contaminated. So all of our blown in insulation now tests high for stachy and chetomium, which is probably a result of everything that got blown through our HVAC. I don't believe, like, yes, there is some roof leak there, but it's like it's not extensive, so I think it's related to that. But yeah, I think we have blown in, but the only way that we can remediate that is to remove all the blown in and replace it with something. So
yep.
it's
That's why we had I mean, again, it was kind of like what was left in the attic, and we put in ridge vents because it really wasn't
uh-huh.
you know, crazy good for ventilation, which is insane to me when you think about living in the Midwest. You have a black roof, it's like the hottest part. Um, so I'm like, what exactly were people thinking?
Do you have box vents in your roof? Because we have the opposite. We have ridge vents, and we need to add box
I
vents
think we had
for
box
better.
vents. And so
Oh my
I
god!
mean, yeah, so everything, yeah, so we had to switch or add more so that there's
Yeah.
just more ventilation and stuff
Yes.
because there is like one of these things we actually had to get like a cover for it because we could still feel like warmth coming through. It's like one of those things, and this is an older home, and I had never seen it before, so I don't even know what it's called. But if you turn it on, I think it blows air up there. I turned it on when we first moved in because I was like, oh, what is this? I actually thought it was like a ladder that was going to come from the attic, and it made like it was the scariest noise I've ever heard. It was so loud. It was like out of a horror movie because it's so old. I'm like, okay, we need to just cover that. And God, the things that we've learned. Even having a basement, like I will never have another basement. I will 100% hands down take my risk with a tornado. I don't. If it's my
You
time, it's my
know,
time.
I will say I'm fine with an unfinished basement. Like,
Yep.
I'm totally fine with an unfinished basement. And I think that's what I wish I had done in our old home. Like, in hindsight, I wish we had just completely, like, when we gutted our old house, we didn't take out the ceiling. And I actually wish we had done that. Kind of also, for my own, because then I would have been able to see whether there was other issues, because we had clear testing when we sold, we disclosed. I don't know, like at the time I was like, we got everything. I just don't know, like that's the thing, is it's like you disclose what you know at the time, and then what I learned now makes me question everything, you know but like right now our basement is completely unfinished, and I actually feel like it's the safest area of my home because I'm like, I can see everything. Like, I can literally see everything, every single floor joist, the entire subfloor, and like all of that is clean. Like, the inspector that looked at our old house and then looked at this one, he's like, no, this house does have good bones. Like, if you choose to stay long term, it does have good bones. And so that was what we were trying for. We just didn't expect this. But I think like our dream had been building like a barn dough on slab, or I've even joked about
Oh,
building
barn
like
down,
a
yeah.
straw. Yeah, I would have loved a barn dough. And we were like, we were going to put an ERV and like mini splits, and just then we realized it would have probably been well over $500,000. And as crazy as it is, where we are is still cheaper than where we would have been building, which is insane. But again, if it was a one person house, it would have been very different than building for a family of five. So
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I guess I should say like I don't I don't completely hate the basement. Now I'll like it better when carpet and we pulled all that because that's going to be our next thing is pulling stuff throughout the house and ridding all that. But like the utility room where the laundry's at, and then there's the crawl space and stuff, and it's like all these were built so bad that now it's like our remediator's like, okay, you should have a fan going. So now we have literally this huge fan that's downstairs blowing through the crawl space to keep ventilation going. So we're literally just have this fan that we're paying to just blow. And I just feel like, oh my gosh, with electricity, it's like, okay, well, this is wild that this is what we have to do in our home to survive. Like, why wasn't it just built with proper ventilation? Plus,
For
have a
sure.
dehumidifier sitting down there. Um,
Yeah.
and even the stuff I've learned now, where I think we looked at a lot of houses where we would see dehumidifiers, in these homes, and we'd almost immediately pass them because we're like, oh my gosh, they have a dehumidifier. It's probably got water damage or blah, blah. No, they were probably just smart and having a dehumidifier run all the time to avoid stuff like that. Because I can't imagine the 90% that we see, and every single one of them had water damage. A few of them, sure, but no, it's just a common thing. Again, I'm from Seattle. I didn't really know much about that. And so now we just have all this extra stuff running.
Yeah, we have 3 Corsi Rosenthals, 2 Austin Air. What else do we have? We have 2 Air Doctors. Like we've literally got, I mean, the Corsi Rosenthals are my favorite. But yeah, we have so many things. And I'm like, no one ever told me I was going to be prioritizing indoor air quality over aesthetics. Like, it's like, I don't even care that I have gutted rooms in my house. It's like, is my air quality good? It's just, and oh gosh, you said something else that I was thinking on. But yeah, this house didn't have a dehumidifier in the basement. And I was like, and we picked the house without the dehumidifier. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, and yeah, and when we actually first moved in, this is before I learned about all the air quality systems that you could even get installed. And so we actually installed a Remy Halo that goes onto the HVAC, which is like the UV lights to help with mold spores. And I remember the guy coming up, he's like, well, your humidifier is off. Do you want me to turn it on? I mean, it was like, so that's what we have, something that actually can like turn up the humidity like through the HVAC. And I'm like, why would anybody want to do that? I don't know, like maybe in the 70s it was different or something, but I was like, who wants a humidifier in their home?
Did yours have a whole home humidifier?
Yeah, like to add humidity.
Yours had that?
I don't know if it's the whole home, but it must be because it's downstairs, like on the HVAC. I mean, I'd never seen one or like done anything with it before because I was like, well, who would want to do that? He's like, well, are you noticing a lot of static and stuff? And I was like, I mean, I don't I don't really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that I did learn about the ERV because I had someone that told me like they didn't do an ERV because they were told it adds humidity. And the interesting thing about the ERV, because everyone wants to do HRVs. Everyone wants to do HRVs pretty much everywhere. And an ERV is different because it does bring in air from outside. And in the summer, it removes some of the humidity. In the winter, it doesn't remove the humidity. And so that's where people were saying, oh, it adds humidity. And it's like, it actually doesn't. It just doesn't eliminate it if it's an appropriate amount. Because again, like you also don't want a home that is so bone dry that everyone's mucous membranes are drying out. That's also
Right.
not healthy. And some humidity, like homes are built to withstand some humidity. Like it's not the absence of it. And so that was one thing that we had to wrap our brains around too, because we're like, okay, if we're adding something to the house, like if we're spending $6,800 adding something to the house that everyone keeps saying is a huge preventative health conscious thing, I want to know exactly why I'm spending every cent of my money. And that was one thing that in the beginning of our remediation journey, I wish I had known to ask, what is your practice for air scrubbing? What is your practice for containment? Why am I paying you $10,000? What are you doing for this? Are you small particle cleaning? Tell me how you're protecting my HVAC. In the beginning, I think we were so panicked, and this was more at our old house, that we ended up paying a remediation company $10,000 to take care of a bathroom, and then finding like, oh my God, Tiffany, I did not even remember that this happened. They left materials that were damaged and we hired them again. Like, it's crazy. Ugh. Your brain does
Girls.
not,
The
your
amount of
brain
stuff
does.
we learn on this journey and you just don't even think until.
No, and then we had friends that helped us do the rest of the basement remediation in our old home under containment with air scrubbing, like proper practices for like a fraction of the cost. And then we had post testing done and it was clear, and then we moved. And then I hired the same company for my new house. Like, make it make sense. It's just like your brain literally does not work properly on this journey. It's
No, and when you're in fight or flight, and you're obviously still healing and going through the healing journey, which I feel like is I don't know, probably never ending, but you
oh, for sure.
just don't think clearly. You don't.
You know what I just thought of? I'm like, so obviously or not obviously, but like I have an eating disorder in my past, right? Like, and the weird thing about healing from that is you always have to be around food and you have to learn to peacefully coexist about food. And I'm like, oh my God, this is similar because you can't there's not many places in life that you can learn to be without a house. You have to learn to peacefully coexist with a house. And especially when you've also had chronic illness, you have to learn to peacefully coexist with your body again. Like, there's no way of bypassing those experiences.
I mean,
I
and
don't even.
obviously not just our houses, but and I hate to use that term, that it is everywhere, but it truly is. I mean, I don't go out even to public places or restaurants or even the veterinary service. When we were at the vets for our dog, looking at the vents and stuff, and I mean, my anxiousness was just freaking out. Or we were getting our oil changed and we were sitting in the lobby, and I look up and you can clearly see that there was water damage, which immediately tells me that there's mold somewhere behind those walls. You could see the wet spots on the ceiling. So it is truly everywhere. And so learning to have to work with your body and trust your body. It's hard to trust your body when it wasn't something you ever used to think about. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was at every concert, every, football game, which means tons of alcohol, junk food, all these things that like now I don't even think about. I'd be too terrified to touch. I mean, I haven't had alcohol in 3 years. We're not eating out. Most of the foods they can't handle. So it's a totally different lifestyle. And I know we said before we got on this, it's like, our bodies having to trust them. It's a lot, because I know that our bodies do know how to heal. You think about 100 years ago, and my grandparents were having to go through sickness and healing and all this stuff without XYZ protocol because they didn't have it back then. But having to get to that spot is very, very difficult when you're
Yeah.
sick.
And that's one thing that, like, I think, and I kind of wonder if moving environments so many times was like a really crappy exposure therapy for me, because I do notice now that, like, we have a family member's home that I don't do well in. And then we have another family member's home that definitely has issues, but I do fine in. Like, I've told you this. Like I said, if I had known that I was going to do fine in a 1950s build that had plaster and original hardwood, like I wish I had known, because I would have purchased an older home. Also because the price point is better. But, again, anything. But I finally, I think, have gotten to the point where, like, I don't freak out when I walk past containment areas in my work. I don't freak out when I see like a moldy drop tile on the ceiling, because I kind of like have gotten to the point now where I wait for my body response first. But that's only because I've lived in so many crappy places at this point and had so many exposures that I've learned that seeing it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to elicit the reaction. Because I think for me, I'm like, there must be something about how it's produced with fiberglass insulation. There must be something with the cellulose and drywall. Like, there must be something with the type. Not that any type is necessarily better, but I think we sensitize to certain ones depending on how we got sick. And then obviously, like, tolerance can be lower. but I think it's taken me a while to get to the point where I still notice it everywhere I go. And depending on how I'm feeling, like we had a event for a family member, and I noticed, I'm like, oh, I've had 2 days where I really don't feel well being in this building. And then I started to be like, okay, I need to like minimize my time in here. But I feel like that response is, it's so valid, first off, and it takes a while to heal because you don't want it to go away because it's a valid protection, but you want yourself to be able to handle it without being so escalated that you can't function. It's
Yeah, I was trying to figure this out like last August when I was really sick and my histamine bucket was just bursting, overflowing. I mean, I couldn't make those rash decisions. I could feel the tightness and inflammation in my body. Um, I could feel the pins and needles. I could feel just kind of like shaky, like all those things, which it is wild again how it can affect everybody different. And there were a lot of signs that were leading up to that, that I spent a long time just kind of like, oh, I just have new allergies because I'm living in a new climate, or oh, this just must be I'm hormonal because I'm probably going through perimenopause or whatever. It's just things that you do truly put off that you don't connect back to being what it is. And so it's I think it's a really slow and long process, and it's like you never know because every situation affects us all different. I mean, my symptoms have been different even from this house to our last house. Which that house we did find out did actually have mold in it because that new buyer pulled the carpet within like the second day of moving in, and that agent actually messaged us like, hey, do you know anything about this? And we were like, no, because we'd never had water damage. I mean, it was 2012, and Kelly had lived in it for 5 years. It was underneath carpet, which there was no signs on the carpet, and all the OSB boards, what looked to me, I'm positive, was just all black mold. And so I'm like, how does this stuff even happen in a bedroom under a carpet without any type of signs? So, there was stuff in there, and how our body reacts to symptoms and things I feel here are different. Kelly didn't have the same symptoms there as she does now. So I feel like it's just like this constant, like, oh, what are we going to play today? Because how my body chooses to react is not usually always the same.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing where I had a really long time where when I was staying with a friend, because like I had been tenting for a while, and when I got out of our apartment, I stayed with a friend, and I like mostly went into remission, and then I was like, oh, I only have POTS now. Like my MCAS is better, my SIRS is better. I seem to only have POTS now because I was having just a ton of blood pooling, and then I had to like start an antihistamine for a dental surgery that I was unplanned, and the pot stuff got better, and I was like, oh my god, these are all connected. Like, of course they're all connected, but I think like sometimes our brain wants to simplify it to like one thing rather than one big systemic thing where they all feed off of each other. Like SIRS suppresses your immune system, it dysregulates mast cells. Dysregulated mast cells make blood vessels leaky because of histamine. There's POTS. It is all connected. But I had a similar thing too, where the symptoms that I had at our original house, I mean, they were insane. Like, I won't even go into all of them, but it was like over 60 symptoms. And then every other environment, once I had kind of had the immune response take off, it's like now most of what I deal with is a lot of like blood pooling, flushing. I will get a lot of like neurological symptoms. I'll get a ton of mood dysregulation from it. But it's different. And that's, I think, what always made it so hard is it's like there are certain things that always come up, but it's also watching air quality. It's also
And humidity. I mean, sometimes, yeah, I sometimes our flare-ups and things that happen aren't necessarily because of mold. 2 weeks ago, now we are going through a heat wave, really bad now. Our humidity is lower now. It spikes in the morning and at night, to 75% plus. But during the day, it's a lot less. Whereas when we had that heat wave a couple weeks ago, the humidity was just like constant. It was like we couldn't get a break day or night. It was just a week of just constant, where I was flared up. I was wearing compression stockings every single day. I was taking 1 to 2 baths baking soda, which no, cool baths with baking soda actually really, really help with the inflammation. Like I was actually really shocked. Um, and so things like that, that'll just completely flare you up. Now we're expecting smoke from Canada. I have not experienced the smoke yet since being sick. Um, and I don't like to 100% avoid being outside because obviously we live in the Midwest, so we're locked inside a lot for winter. I try to limit it, but we will see, I guess, spin the bottle on how my body wants to react with smoke.
That was one of the craziest things that I noticed. And so, like, one thing that has held true for me is I noticed that when I'm not in mold, my tolerance for other triggers improves, right? So, like, it definitely has, this has been one thing that I have been able to hold is that when I'm not in an environment that is taxing my immune system, because mold seems to be my main dog and viral things do too, then I tolerate the other things better. But that was something last year where our air quality was getting up to, I think, like 170. Like it was getting up to like the 170s, 180s. And how it manifested for me was the blood pooling, the dysautonomia, but I would have it like where all of my joints would lock up. Because I remember like I couldn't even pull up a blanket in our tent because we were again outside this time last year, and we're outside at this time right now too. And I'm hoping that it's not going to get super bad because it would always impact my joints and my spine. And that's like, it's weird because I think each of us, like Laura's got a very GI presentation. I think, that's been a really distinct one for her. And just thinking of each one of us and how Kate had her eyes really affected. Everybody's kind of had different things that have presented for them. Mine has been like joints and nerves, really. And then just anaphylaxis. But it's weird how it picks certain systems, it seems like, or it focuses in.
Yeah, and I don't, even out of the us, there's seven of us girls here that that do the podcast or the other people that I've met throughout this journey. I haven't met anybody else that has their symptoms manifested the same way as mine. It's like it
Mhm.
truly just affects every single person completely different. I mean, there might be similarities like, histamine intolerance or little things like that, but how it actually just came about or manifested, it's just bizarre to me how it makes it harder to pinpoint what it is because every single person is so different in how they react to it.
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000% it does.
And that's like
I
one of the
know.
trickiest things to me. I'm like, this is like, in my opinion, like an evil entity that can just go around and affect everybody however it feels like with that person. It's the craziest thing, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I had, like, I talk about this a lot too. Like, I had a similar presentation in my 20s in an apartment that we lived in that was water damaged. And, like, what was weird was I had that at that age. And then I had almost the same type of symptoms. And so it gave me context for why this happened in my 20s because I almost had like bilateral carpal and cubital tunnel surgery to like release. And I was like, that was neuropathy related to mold because then when I left, it resolved. It's just wild. It's
I
just
think there was a
crazy.
lot of times throughout my life, like I'm almost sure of it, that, I've been exposed to mold. I think it's just ramped up so much in the past 5 to 6 years that I mean, everybody's histamine buckets and toxic load has just gotten too full that people's bodies just can't, they just can't handle it anymore.
Hmm.
I
Oh,
think especially
exactly.
since COVID. But I have met a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, I went through this 20 years ago. Oh my gosh, I went through this like 10 years ago. But it's never been talked about. I mean, I had followed Timberly, who's also on this, co-host on this podcast for a couple years. We had been friends on Facebook. So I had like been following her journey. But I still wasn't like connecting in my brain the whole mold toxicity and what it can do, even despite just like following throughout the whole journey. Because she was really the only person I feel like at that time that I was hearing even talk about mold toxicity. So I think maybe somewhere in my brain it was like, oh, before I learned and educated myself, well, her house just must have been really bad or this, that. No, it wasn't. I mean, it was tip top, you would have no idea. Um, yeah, It's the weirdest thing.
That's the hardest thing too, because I think like, we have a family history of MS and we have a family history of Charcot-Marie-Tooth, which are both like neuromuscular diseases. And I was asked really frequently, like, are you sure it's not this? Like, are you sure it's not just this? And I'm like, I would question that and I would believe that if things didn't resolve when I changed environments. And I'm not talking like got better. I'm talking like I no longer experience those things, where I went from having daily numbness and daily pain and daily experiences of this to complete resolution of this. And so MS doesn't do that. CMT does not do that. Like no other condition does that. Like I would have, again, like lipedema type, I don't know if it's lipedema or cellulite, that I would like start developing in my legs because I think it was stagnant lymph drainage. And that would resolve. Like that was one of the most telling things, is that I would change nothing with how I ate, slept, trained, literally change nothing. And my skin would clear up and my body would I would literally start to lose weight when I was in an environment that was healthy. And I was like, and my period would normalize. Like it was as soon as I was in an environment that wasn't true, weight would climb, like all of these things. And I think so many people want to say, but like, what else is it? And it's like, no, it's literally the air that you breathe. Like it is causing that inflammatory response, and it's causing these cellular reactions, these mast cell reactions, because no other variable is changing. And I've neurotically tracked like what I've eaten during this time, and like resting heart rate and heart rate variability and all of that. I'm a huge biofeedback nerd, how I train, how much I lift. And I'm like, every single one of these metrics gets better every single time I change to an environment that supports my body, and I can feel it everywhere. But we really want to be like, oh, it must be this, or oh, it must be this, and oh, it can't be environmental, and not acknowledge the fact that things in our world have changed that set this up to be more common than we are currently recognizing.
Yeah. And, it's so wild how so many people will still look at mold like almost like you're contagious, or oh my gosh, my cat, or
Mm-hmm.
almost like like you are crazy. But I've had it, even friends that I've been friends with for 20 plus years, like people have just almost fallen off the earth. I
Yeah.
have people that are sick and that are still searching for answers, where I have asked them, have you, had water leaks or tested your house for mold, or asked your doctors to, test your mycotoxins like blood, any of these tests, and they just are like, oh no, that can't be it. And it's like, for some reason with me, Timberly actually told me the day before I had gotten on the phone with my neuropath, like, girl, it sounds like mold. And I was like, what? I and but I was never like, I never really like fought her or anybody on it. Even when my naturopath the next day, she goes, girl, you've got massive mold toxicity right now. Like your levels are really high. I never fought it. Like, well, that can't be right. I just, for some reason, was like, okay, this is what we're doing now. And then I just went on this whole other journey of learning the things. I mean, I didn't really know much about like histamine intolerance, or, I'd never
Yeah.
had food sensitivities. I've always literally pretty much ate what I want. Half of it was freaking garbage, to be honest. So now I'm sitting here like thanking my body for doing, keeping up with all the things that I've done to it. But so many people want to fight it, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
why they want to fight it. Because I feel like we're out here just like, do you think we're out here like trying to say, oh my gosh, it's mold, like this is so fun, come over here and join the party? Like, we're not trying to make a thing out of it. It really is awareness. But there is some people that just will not, like, there's just no way. There's no way it can be mold. That's it. Booked, close.
Yeah. And a lot of people, like, one of the things I got is like, oh, does insurance cover that? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, I can't afford that. And I'm like, nobody can. Nobody can
Nobody.
afford this. Nobody. I have no idea how we're going to financially recover, but I know that my health is worth fighting for and the health of my kids is worth fighting for. And to me, that like, I can't set aside that sacrifice once I've seen that and known this. And also, like, there was not a single treatment that made me better. And that's where I'm like, my affinity, or not even affinity, my conviction for this became so strong. Where, and a lot of this too, my mom had gotten severely mold sick. And I'm trying to remember, I think it was back in like 2019 or something like that. It was earlier, and I had seen her go through this, and I had watched her like react to every single supplement and everything, and I was like, oh my god, like, Mom, you have mast cell activation syndrome. And so I had seen this in my family, and I had seen someone else get sick, like deathly sick, because she stayed in her apartment when they were remediating, and she sent me pictures, and the containment was hanging down, and she had stacky floor to ceiling.
Oh,
And so I had seen how sick she had gotten. And that was the only reason I think that I was like, oh, I'm noticing some of these things. And I'm wondering if this is something that is like true, and it was that curiosity, because in my case, I was the one that pushed for figuring it out, because I was the one that figured it out. And like, I worked with practitioners, and I was like, no, like, help me figure this out, because this is what I think it was. And I think only because I'm a nurse and I can come in armed with research, I did have people that took me seriously. But a lot of people don't know. And I think that's why it's so important to spread this message. And you have to like learn to put shame and ego aside and just be like, this is my truth. And you're either going to think I'm insane and need to be locked up, or you're going to understand that this is a real truth.
yes, because it's not a reflection, of who you are as a person. It's not a reflection of how you take care of your home. I know that's very much a stereotype of, oh my gosh, that means you live in a dirty home or a hoarder home, or it just must be, you never clean. Like, that is not the case. You can have a brand new build. You can have a spotless house that has nothing in it. There is nothing to it. It's not a reflection on you, because it can really come up anywhere, and it can come up easy. It just takes water and humidity, and those two together are just a perfect
Humidity.
combo. Yep.
Mhm. Well, I'm so glad we got to have this conversation today. Is there anything else that you want to say in closing? So, for those that don't know, this was our second time recording, because our first one, we had lots of technical issues. So we nailed it this time.
I know. So if it's gonna cut out, I was like, okay, it's the end. No, I
At
mean,
least,
I don't have anything else to share. Like, I think we kind of touched over everything that we were gonna talk about.
yeah, yay. Well, I'm so glad. Thank you, Tiff. It's been a pleasure, and have a good survive. Okay, we're going to keep sending air quality back to each other and hope that we can just ride this out and that it'll be fine.
Yes, all the good vibes. I'm just manifesting all the greatness.
Bye, hun. I'll talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Thank you for listening to Sporecast. If something in this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next time.